I was teaching it this Monday, and then all of a sudden, we all heard what to me seemed like explosions. It sounded like maybe something electrical, some generator, some major electrical component of the building had exploded. But it wasn't just one, then it was two and three in a row. By then, they started sounding more like, this is not the building, this is something else. And had a hat and a mask, so you couldn't really see a human. To me, it kind of matched like some robot, something that walked in our class that wanted to, destroy. And I saw what seemed to me like silvery object. I just could see like fireworks coming out of it, and it was the shots and the sound of it, which was horrendous. And when he stood up in front of the door, my students screamed, and I don't know if one of them says a shooter, but everybody reacted in panic. Some stood up and were frozen in place. Some threw themselves under the seats, their desks. Some ran towards me. It was obviously chaos, but I could just hear and see that he was shooting and shooting and shooting and shooting. I don't know how many times he shot. I don't think he stopped or paused shooting. He was just shooting and shooting and shooting. Maybe at least 15 shots. That sounded to me like an eternity. I cannot tell you if it lasted 30 seconds or if it lasted 2 minutes. I cannot tell you that. And at some point in that lapse of maybe 2 minutes, he seemed to leave the classroom. And then he came in here. And that's where he stood, and he was shooting this way, this way, this way. And I was here. I don't know if he shot towards me or not. I was fortunate enough that nothing touched me. And this is the door that I was trying to close, because when he stepped out, we didn't know if he was going to go down the hall and into this door, or leave, or go to other classrooms and cause more death. Many students were escaping through this second set of windows, because the first set, it was difficult to have enough room. I just kept telling myself, this is not happening. This is not happening. I was getting ready in my mind that I could be killed in the next few seconds. And I'm just going to be ready to feel a gunshot in me. He didn't come back in, but no one in the classroom knew that. As far as we knew, he was, walking down the hall into other classrooms, and he may come back to our classroom. So in that period of time, I told my students, as I'm holding the door, kick the windows open, escape through the windows. So about 10 or 15 of them escaped. And then there were some other students who were very heroic. And I had kids that stayed helping those that were asking for help, because by that point, some people were screaming, help, help, I heard. They were more prepared than I am in terms of what do you do in a crisis like this, because they were holding their wounds so they wouldn't bleed to death. While I was holding the door and the kids were escaping through the windows, finally the police arrived, and I saw them outside. At first I was like frightened. I thought it was the shooter again. But then I saw their uniform, because they had these big guns, and I was, oh my God, the shooter. But then it was the police. And then I finally let go of the door, and then they asked me if I was a professor. I said yes, and so they came in, and then they were checking what was going on. And the paramedics had not arrived yet. It probably took 2 or 3 more minutes before the paramedics arrived. It seemed like an eternity to me. But then the ones helping the kids that were wounded were their peers and the police. And then I focused on those two girls, on Arielle and Alexandria. And I was asking, help, these kids need help. So I was trying to pull Alexandria because she was kind of under a seat, and I was trying to pull her to the side, to the aisle, I mean, by the windows where the other one was, where Arielle was, so that at least maybe we could get some help for her, because she was stuck in the middle of the seats and the rows. And but then someone said to me, they are gone. They're gone. And something about pulse, but they're gone. Whether the paramedics or one of my students said they're gone. But I kept insisting they need help, they need help. And then the police asked us, pushed us out the room so that there would only be the paramedics and them. So I had to leave, but I kept on telling the police, please send someone to help, those two girls. And I kept saying that, even when I was outside, and they kept telling me they're doing everything they can do, they'll get help. I don't know. That haunted me, seeing those two girls there in such bad shape. It's what haunts me the most. I saw other kids wounded. I could see the wounds. They were not bleeding terribly because their peers were holding their wounds, but I could see them in pain and saying, it hurts, it hurts. But the ones that were in the worst condition were those two girls, and that's what stayed in my brain, and that's what still haunts me.